Welcome back, folks, to another episode of Business from the Bass Boat Podcast on the Serious Angler Network, presented by Reclending. And today, folks, we've got a great show lined up. Hopefully, you are in the middle of the summer swing of things. Last show, talking about the Opens, had a good call with my buddy Ty Faber this morning, who is right in the hunt, sitting in 8th in the Opens right now. Excited about the Northern Swing, and that's kind of what's kicking off right now in the fishing world, right? We've got all these Northern tournaments about to happen. Of course, the Elite Series is kind of wrapping up their Southern Swing, I guess, per se, down in Alabama. But you're just going to kind of see those Northern fisheries start to pop off, and feel for the guys and gals still down south dealing with the heat. But all the Northern stuff, looking forward to watching the coverage there, and running north myself into North Idaho to chase some big ones as we get into the summertime and escape the heat a little bit for everyone. But without further ado, we've got an incredible show lined up today. It is one that, I have done a show around insurance years ago, and I think it's just because I'm getting older in life. But you start to kind of, I guess, get more risk adverse with things, and you start to think through, okay, am I okay from an insurance standpoint, those types of things. And this show is supposed to really kind of exemplify some of those details, some of the misconceptions, and just make sure that everyone is educated when it comes to insuring bass boats, just because they are ever seemingly going up in price. And of course, there's a lot tied into all of that. Just want to make sure everyone's protected. So without further ado, let's bring in Todd from, oh man, we got a crew. We got a Reclending crew. How's everybody doing in you guys are in the north anyway?
Well, risk averse, that's a great term. I mean, that's kind of fancy way of saying I don't want to lose any of my stuff now. But I agree. Yeah, this is all so when we moved, we started an insurance agency in-house. So it's Reclending Insurance Services. And this young man over here, Jake Woods, he runs the insurance side of it for us. Great kid. This is Ashley. She's been with us. Excuse me. Jake's been here 8 years now. 7 years.
8.
Yep. 8. Ashley, this is her first full year. She's getting there. And this is Heather. She's actually the other than family, the longest employee that we had at Reclending. I moved her over from. She was the office manager for Reclending, and now she's moved over to the CSR position in the insurance agency, and she's killing it.
That's awesome. Awesome.
I'll tell you why I thought this was important. Okay. Is just like you said, as you get older, things in your life begin to change priority wise. And so many of these kids are, and I don't mean to call you kids. Okay. But I mean, so many of these younger anglers don't put the emphasis on how much these boats are now and how much they're at risk. And for crying out loud, they're suing everybody now over anything. And you're putting $25,000 worth of electronics on your boat. You've got $15,000 worth of tackle. I mean, you've got to account for that. And that's kind of where my head was.
Totally. Yeah. I think it's a great idea and worth really getting into the details on, because I totally agree. I think everyone's running around out there, and it's worth considering with the price of these assets that we're running around with. And I think really, I guess to start things off, from folks who are not, if you're listening on MP3 versus YouTube, Todd is sitting in what they consider the vault in the office. We've got Jake, Ashley, and Heather all around a table with fancy mics. I mean, this is more professional than our podcasting stuff. It's making us look bad here. You guys look great.
I've got an IT guy that's a flat geek. Okay. So, and he's wonderful at it. So.
Well, tell us a little bit about the vault. What does the vault consist of?
We're actually not in the vault yet. We're in my office.
Okay. This is your office.
The vault, it's getting painted now, and we're putting some stone up, but it's like a 10 by 14 vault that
Okay.
We can lock ourselves in and lock ourselves and take ourselves out, but it's going to be can I say the bourbon tasting room on TV?
Oh, absolutely. That's what we're
Okay.
talking about.
So it's going to be a bourbon tasting / studio room, and should be done next couple of weeks. Next time that we do something, it'll be done. So
Wow. How
yeah,
cool.
pretty
Not
cool.
every place has a vault with a bourbon tasting room when you go to work. So that's a pretty fun thing to have in the office, if I might say so.
Who in their right mind would put on my 50-year plan to have a vault? So I just try and do something with it. That's all.
Oh,
So you ever
love it.
totaled a boat?
You know, I haven't. I have crashed a boat. And I've had a couple of insurance claims surrounding boats. And I think if you haven't had a insurance claim and you are a bass boat owner, then you probably haven't had a bass boat long enough. Just going to throw that out there. Is that a fair statement?
I agree.
I agree.
I agree. Or you're not taking
Uh,
enough chances to win a lot of money. So
that's
that's what it comes
also a
to.
factor.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm not
So
advocating somebody
I,
take too many chances. Sorry.
I've put a boat on the rocks before when I didn't know what I was doing. I've done that during a tournament where it was I had just got my first boat, and it was a 2005 Legend. I really didn't know what I was doing, and it like the first tournament I ever fished was nasty, like 3 and 4 footers. I'm in an 18.5 foot Legend, and ran down the lake fine and got back just fine. But loading the boat, it was just one of those where, you know, it literally was blowing 40, 50 mile an hour on a small lake in Colorado, but it's a desert lake. And the waves just were pounding the ramp.
Oh God.
And basically we're talking like you go to drop your partner off to go grab your truck and the dock's going like this, right? And so jumped off, went to go grab the truck. I hit it in reverse, and those, especially those older, smaller Legends, the gas tank's in the back. And so
Oh
that
God.
boat sits really low like this. So I hit it in reverse because I was about to hit the dock. Wave comes in and I mean just soaked me, bilge pumps running. I'm freaking out, you know, and there's all these other boats around, thankfully. And I watched a guy go in reverse and do that and almost like, I mean, just absolutely almost sunk his boat. Like tons of water came in. So that freaked me out. So I did it a little bit. And then I was like, I'm not going to keep going in reverse. Should have. I ended up turning
Oh no.
and wave pushed me against the rocks hard, landed with the boat on the rocks. And luckily enough, and I was young, and these Brandon, it was Brandon and I think Cliff, if they're listening, from the Colorado Bass Club stuff, but they came running down the ramp and they're like, you're good, just start the motor. And they pushed me off and I got off of the rocks. And again, waves are just crashing, and we got it on the trailer. I was shaken up and all of that, but that was an insurance claim for some fiberglass repair. That was my first fiberglass experience.
Oh man. Oh man. Well, I have a couple.
You've got real ones. You've got like totaled boats, from what I understand.
Yep. I had a rock. Do have a rock story where I totaled one.
Oh, let's hear it.
I was on the Detroit River all by myself, just practicing, and I wasn't paying attention. But there's a little rocky outcrop that comes out. It's only about 1.5 foot of water on top of it. And I was really close to it, and a barge come by, and I just wasn't paying attention. And the barge picked me up and sat that boat down, centered on the rocks, broke the keel. I mean, shook me up because it hit so hard that, I mean, it put me on the deck, and I'm all by myself. I had to call somebody to pull me off. Boat almost sank getting on the trailer, but it was irreparable. Sunk one in Lake at Rayburn.
You sunk one at Rayburn?
Oh yeah, when there was remember they had the 18 or the 150 restrictions. So I had a little 18.5 foot hydrosport, and we were sitting at breakfast and everybody saying, yeah, we're not going out. It's blowing too hard. It's blowing, in the arrogant 20 something I was at that time. So I'm from Michigan, so I can drive in anything. I mean, I'm used to big waves all the time. And we took off, and you had to climb them and then wait for them to bring you down. I mean, they were giants. And I started climbing one, and the motor blew out, and it dunked me underwater and killed the motor. And the guy I was fishing with, I looked at him. I said, "Get your vest on, because we're going down."
Oh,
luckily, I could. Motor wouldn't start again, but it would start, but it wouldn't let me when I put it in gear, it'd stall again. So I finally limped it to the back of this island and took the plugs out, dried them all off, started it up, but I didn't know at that point that I'd trashed all the electrical in there. I mean, everything was soaked. I mean, everything had shorted out everywhere. And then the motor, it hydrolocked. Have you ever heard of that?
Nope.
That's when it sucks water in and it just locks it up. So, but yeah, made it though. We didn't drown.
That's crazy. That is like, and Rayburn is one of those that I think, especially like you said, maybe folks up north, obviously up north, there's crazy big water, but I have been in legit, like you're saying, like 6-footers on Rayburn before. Like that place it just blows straight up or down it. And there's guys who crash boats or sink boats on that place, almost every year. It seems like that place can get massive.
That derby ended up being the second day was the first time that BASS ever canceled a day of fishing. And it was brutal. I saw, what's his name? The guy that invented the Pop R, Zell Rowland. Made it famous anyway. So that morning, we were launched in one spot over at Twin Dykes, or is it Twin Dykes? Yeah, Twin Dykes. And you go around the corner where everybody's taking off from, and there is his boat. It was pretty as a picture. I mean, it was. I could see right underneath his boat, but he was on a rock pile. Oh, no. It was ugly, really ugly.
That is no. Well, we have all these stories around boat stuff. The question is, I guess, so I have been, knock on wood, very successful, and I've always tried to put my insurance in a good position in order to be protected with a boat. What about you? I guess in these situations, was it an okay situation? Obviously, the insurance side from an overall standpoint to Reclending is new. I mean, it started 6 years, but and this is a developing process.
Sure.
In my mind, to make the process easier on somebody buying a boat, right? I mean, it's a pain in the butt to get all your ducks in a row, and I'm sure you've dealt with probably have war stories with your customer base of like maybe something wasn't set up all the way, and then your boat leaves the lot and something happens. I guess where did it come about from Reclending's perspective, and then we'll get back into have you had any stories, whether it be personally with you or within the company, with bad stuff?
Insurance is an integral part of a boat loan. Okay, it's required to secure the collateral for the lender, get to place liens so that they know who gets paid when the boat gets damaged or whatever it happens to be. So we've always had an insurance component with Reclending, but when we moved and had the more room and we'd kind of looked at some insurance stuff, and I always promised Jake that if we got in a place where we could start an agency, I'd let him run one and we'd see what happens. And I couldn't be happier with the way it's going. I couldn't be happier with the way these three are rock stars. I mean, when it comes to the insurance world, oh my gosh, they keep me legit.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
They were number 2 in the state in March, right? Mm-hmm. February or March. Number 2. We'd only been doing it for 2 months. They've done a nice job.
That's great to hear. And I think that there's so much you can bring to a potential customer or someone you've had long standing, where it's like, hey, if you've got an insurance guy, check them out. But like, here's what we can offer. Here's how we can make this a seamless process on the purchase of a of a boat, because I'm sure you've chased down insurance guys, last minute to try and get something across the table. And it's just a pain in the butt on everyone. And,
Yep.
and can be, there's risk there. There's risk for the customer and the client in a situation where there's a lot of money at risk when you're buying a boat. And if you leave the lot and you are not properly insured and you get into an accident, you're on the hook for it. There's no other way to kind of put it.
Nope. Again, please don't let me imply that I am a licensed agent, and it is our agency, but these folks are the ones that have the knowledge. I just let them do their thing. So if it comes down to specifics, we ask them. I sit down with them and say, how do I do this on my car? Or how do I do this on the business insurance? Or how do I do this on that? So they're the knowledge. I just steer the boat. So
Yeah.
remind me, I'll
Okay.
tell you about remind me after a while, I'll tell you a story about planning ahead. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like it. Well, let's get a little bit into the process that people need to be aware of when it comes to going to purchase a boat. Maybe that's a great place to start. You've got the boat picked out, you've got your loan squared away, and or you've got that process in the books, and you're going to pick up the boat on Saturday. You're fired up. You're running to the dealership. What needs to be in place from an insurance perspective? How soon in advance should you be planning that kind of stuff? And, I don't know if that's a question for Jake or Ashley. Who wants to take that one?
I'll get started. I think the biggest thing is to be prepared that the date that you sign the contract for that boat, you initially own that boat. So you should really have an effective date of whatever date you're signing that contract. Even if you plan on picking the boat up a week later or 3 days later, you're still legally liable for that boat. So to avoid any mishaps with the dealership, as soon as you're prepared to sign the contract, be prepared to insure it. So for the planning aspect, I would kind of judge it based on that day. So as soon as you sign that contract, you own that boat at that point.
Got it. Okay. Now, a tail question there to that would what happens if you're trading boats or you're selling a boat and you have insurance on one boat, and then you're going to the next one? Is that just as simple as giving the details to the insurance and then they're just switching those policies on that same day? What if your boat hasn't sold yet, or what's kind of any advice for someone who's in a transition into a newer boat?
Oftentimes, if you are transferring or trading in a boat, you can just call your agent and switch out the unit. The policy is already intact. It gets a little tricky if you aren't trading in your boat and you're going to have both. You still need to have like insurance on both boats. So then you would add a unit to it basically. But very similar to car insurance, you can switch out a vehicle or a unit at any time. So uh, it's pretty seamless, especially if you already have a policy in place. Sometimes when you are just starting out a brand new policy or adding a unit, it can get a little bit more detailed. We need to ask some more questions, things like that.
Got it. Got it. Okay. And for folks who are tournament anglers, I guess you're spending time, a lot more time, right? Like I think the vast majority of fishermen and women spend a lot more time on the water utilizing these things, and maybe that's why we have more insurance claims than the average individual who has a wakeboarding boat and maybe they go out a couple of times throughout the summer, kind of a thing. Is there anything, I guess, from a policy standpoint that people need to pay attention to when it comes to tournament fishing, knowing that you're going to be fishing a lot? Anything that I guess is in addition or worth mentioning when it comes to what you're looking at with your insurance?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, bass boats are going to be more claims than your typical wake boat or something like that. Just more time spent on them. So something we always ask as far as equipment is like electronics, what's going to add value to the boat, things you want to make sure you're covering that you're using all the time, that's bolted and attached to the boat, power poles, trolling motor, all your graphs. You want to account for all of that. And then just be conscious of, being on the water, your liability limits, make sure you're covering yourself correctly. And I would stress, as far as a policy, agreed value or total loss replacement.
Hmm.
You can get in trouble if you choose a actual cash value loss settlement, because your asset is then depreciating and they're deciding how much the boat's worth at the time of a claim versus what you said at the beginning. So that's very important to protect what you invested in the boat and everything on it, and make sure you have a smooth process if you do have to go through an issue or something gets taken off by a wave or a collision or weather, anything. So
I would just add to
Okay.
that too, if you are tournament fishing, really need to look at the fine print in your policy documents and the wording and how things are worded, because some companies do exclude losses during tournament fishing. So it's definitely, if you are out there, you're making any sort of money on it, or you are fishing multiple tournaments throughout the year, even if you consider it a hobby, your insurance carrier may see that differently. And so it's definitely a question that you need to approach with your agent and get into the fine details of the policy wording to see if that's something that would be covered.
I think about that one a lot. I really do. And because as many tournament anglers know, we love the idea of saying, we always talk about the checks that we've cashed in tournaments. And we're like, oh yeah, that was a sweet one. We're having a heck of a year. And rarely, rarely do we look at the expenses. And my journey anyway, the last 3 years, I've made it a legitimate business as a part of my tax return and fishing. And it's like, wow, spending a lot of money doing this hobby slash business when it comes down to it. And so anyways, I think that's something. When you see wrapped boats, you see all these companies going around, and guys are sponsored. At the end of the day, whether it's a hobby or a true actual business and income for somebody, there is implications there, right? The insurance, in my mind, how I've always viewed insurance stuff, and maybe this is incorrect and you guys can correct me here, but it's always like, if it's a big claim, I mean, if it's a real claim, I think if someone, has a fender bender and it's a minor fix, generally in my mind, they're paid out. If it's something like, hey, someone's life's in danger, someone went to the hospital, someone totaled a boat, whatever it may be, when it starts talking like that level of stuff, in my mind, an insurance agency is going to likely try and get out of that the best of their ability. And that's a pessimistic approach, but it's my thought process with things. Want to make sure to have the right coverage is what I guess my point is when you're talking about that kind of stuff. But is that a fair statement? If it's a real claim, like, you better be reading your documentation, because it's all going to kind of end up coming to I guess, the
Remember,
table.
remember, insurance companies are businesses too, and their job is to try and mitigate loss. And if there's something that they can do to diminish a claim or diminish the amount of money they got to put out, they're going to look for it. But to be honest, that's where an agent comes in. So you should have an agent that is your advocate and has led you down the right path to begin with. Do you agree?
Yeah, I was going to just add that where, once a claim is filed, it's not really up to the agent on how that's going to go. The claims investigation is going to be done by the company itself or the insurance carrier. So it is our job as agents to be proactive and to make sure that we have the things correctly covered and protected right off the bat before a claim happens. Because once you file that claim, they're going to thoroughly investigate it, and they will find any hole that's in those coverages to try to avoid paying out that loss if they have to. Not because they don't want to pay them out, because obviously they wouldn't be in business if they didn't cover, a certain amount of claims. But if they find any wording in there that would exclude it because it is tournament fishing, for example, or the value is not there, under ACV instead of agreed, those things are all going to come to play when a claim is filed. And so it's really up to your agent to make sure that you have the best scenario in the event of a loss.
Got it. Got it. And just so everyone, I guess, understands how agent versus the claims process works. So in the case with Reclending's insurance team, you all would be considered the agents. You're dealing with the client directly. You set up the insurance, and then if a claim happens, you're saying basically the client, the individual, is going to reach out and say, hey, here's what's going on, and then you are representing or helping that process through a claim. Is that
Yes. We're going to be the liaison between the customer, the insurance adjuster, and the insurance carrier or the company that's covering that.
yeah? So you're in the corner of the customer is
Correct.
at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
Got it. Got it. Okay. I think that's all super sound advice. One question just in general with insurance, you know, you hear, especially I'm in the real estate world, and you see home insurance has gone up immensely, not just in your Florida market, in your California market, but all over. And then same with vehicle insurance seems to ever be rising. Has it been affected in the boat world? And I know obviously Reclending does stuff outside of just bass boats, but what is I guess the overall sentiment in the insurance world cost wise, talking June of 2024?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's just like everything else as far as auto, as far as homes. Like you look around anywhere, everything's more expensive to fix and replace. So yeah, bass boat insurance policies have gone up a little bit. But we always recommend to check out, you know, other options, give the agent time to look into all the options they might have available. Look at advanced signing discounts, things with other companies, trying to get all the coverages you want, but maybe some carriers haven't changed their prices yet, or revisions have gone, you know, things kind of change differently for each company. So I would just recommend taking a look at all the options, giving yourself time to do that.
Okay. And when you say advanced signing, what is that as far as for someone who's looking to getting ready to buy a boat, trying to save the most they can, of course, whether that be through the lending process, insurance, what are, I guess, best practices to make sure that you're going to try and get the best deal when it comes to insurance?
Yeah, so don't like wait until Saturday morning when you go into the dealership to call your agent like, "Hey, I'm gonna tow this home today. Can you put some coverage on it for me?" So just plan ahead. I would, you know, same thing with the loan contract we talked about earlier. If you know the signing date coming up, plan best practice would be 7 days ahead of time would be great. But anything over a day ahead of time is going to give you some type of benefit versus same day. You're probably going to pay more, and you may not get the chance to look at all your options. So at least, you know, 7 days would be best, but a couple days is great too. Um, and we can have time to look at all discounts, other things we can add, and go from there. So
There, one of the things that I didn't know is that insurance policy is kind of like a jigsaw puzzle. And there's so many different discounts and there's so many different ways to lay those out that benefit the customer. And the more time the agent has to be able to you know, get, in my case, I get a military discount, I get a business owner discount, I get
Multi-policy.
multi-policy discount. So it lets it
Affiliation.
whatever the affiliate. Yeah, there's so many different affiliations you can get discounts for, like the what is it?
Ducks Unlimited.
Yeah,
And
NWTF.
Wild
Yeah.
Tool
I'm
Federation.
member of both of those. Dang,
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
yeah,
Whitetail Forever. I mean, there's a lot of affiliations that are available. So, I mean, any kind of sportsman, chances are there's going to be an affiliation that you can get a discount for.
That's good to know. Yeah,
Insurance companies look at groups of like National Wild Turkey Federation, for example, or they look at people that are getting insurance 8 days in advance. And they're looking at those types of people from an underwriting aspect. And they're saying these type of people are better risk selections than the person that's going to pick up their boat on Saturday and just now calling to get insurance on it. And so they really try to wager those with some discounts and some better rates for those type of customers, because the data shows that those are safer customers in the long run. They're going to have less losses. They're going to take better care of their boats, things like that.
Wow, that is super intriguing. I would love to look at the data behind, like, okay, statistically speaking, Ducks Unlimited people, you know, they're a safe bet. But when we talk about these bass fishermen, that's why there's no discounts with Bassmaster or whatever it may be,
Oh,
because
it's
these
not.
guys, they've got a risk.
Yeah.
It's the discounts that bring it back down where bass guys can afford it. So
Right. That's super interesting, though. I've always thought that stuff is, I don't know. I was kind of a stats guy, and I just enjoy hearing those kind of
well,
sentiments around.
I mean, there's two different ways to do a policy or to quote a policy. I mean, you do most of them anyway, most of the quoting, but you can either just quote a straight policy, or you can dig into it and you're better to talk about that than I am, but she just digs into it and finds what she needs to find. So what's the most common affiliations you see?
Oh, a lot of it is National Wild Turkey Federation, Ducks Unlimited, Whitetail Forever. There's Pheasants Forever. So when
Military.
you've got military discount. So yeah, when you've got people who are already into sporting, whether if you're not hunting in the fall and you're not deer hunting, or you're not turkey hunting, chances are in the spring you're out fishing. So make sure that you're talking to your agent about what options that you have for that. And a lot of times agents don't necessarily think to ask about that. A lot of agencies aren't recreational forward thinking when it comes to certain things like that. So knowing what to ask your agent to just advocate for yourself a lot of times can get you a lot farther. So if they're not asking you, well, do you have any electronics on your boat? Or if they're not asking you, how much do you think you're going to need to insure your personal effects? So if you've got rods and reels, if you've got bait, that obviously is, you put a lot of money into these items. If they're not asking you about those personal effects, then you need to make sure that you're letting them know, well, hey, listen, I've got, some rods here that are pretty expensive. You want to make sure that those are covered in case something were to happen to them.
What is the stackable discount allowance? So if you stack the discounts, what's the max you can go to for our company?
Like percentage wise?
Yes.
I think it's like 19 or 20%.
Yeah.
So it's worth looking into. Okay. 20% is a real number. Okay.
When you I guess explain that. So, and I think this brings up a really, really good point, Heather, that you were leading into, is like with how expensive all of this gear that we have in our boats, or on the road, whatever it may be, like there is thousands of dollars in rods and reels and tackle. And then you add in electronics that you may add on, right? Like you may buy a boat at a certain package, and then the latest and greatest Garmin comes out and you're like, crap, I got to have that one. And now you've dropped another $6,000 into a graph and a transducer. As that stuff builds, so I guess explain the 20%, and then I guess maybe how to protect some of those additional items that you add on.
Well, most insurance companies, ours included, is going to allow you to have multiple discounts, but they're going to cap that at some point. And the percentage that they cap that on is going to vary based on the insurance company. Our particular company with Farm Bureau is 19 or 20%. And so you can stack discounts. Like you can have the advanced signing discount, and you can be a member of NWTF and get that discount. And you can also get a discount for multi-policy, and basically stack more than one discount until you get up to that 20% off from the total premium on it. So there's options. Just because you get a multi-policy discount doesn't mean you're not going to qualify for anything else. They leave room there to be able to stack those and bundle those together. But a lot of times your agents might not know you from Adam, or might not be privy to the recreational world, and might not think that you are part of the Boaters Association, or that you have $10,000 worth of rods and reels. So that's a big reason why we're here today, is because the agents are supposed to educate the customer on insurance, but they're not necessarily experts at bass fishing. Fortunately, here at Reclending, we are experts at the recreational side of things. So we know to ask those questions. But an agent from down the street that only writes a few boats every month is not going to think that you might have $20,000 worth of electronics added to your boat. So it's one of those things where everybody should remember that insurance, you pay for what you get. And if the premium is cheaper down the street, it's likely that they don't have things like your rods and reels covered or your electronics on your boat. So just think about those things.
Or liability. I mean, how many times do we see,
Yeah.
$100,000 and $100 liability?
Mhm.
And for crying out loud, who do you know that's been sued for $100,000? I mean, you run somebody over and kill them, $100,000 isn't going to cover you. I mean,
No.
we have what's our policy? We try to quote everyone at
least 300
On boats, 300,000. Yeah.
Yep.
Always, or more.
And that's the minimum for tournaments, by the way, as
Mhm.
far as whether you're fishing Bassmaster, Toyota Series, or Major League Fishing. It's all minimums 300. And one comment there that my dad has always given this advice, and since I've always looked at it and made that decision in most situations, whether that be on homeowners insurance, auto insurance, or boating insurance, that little additional extra liability cost, going from a $300,000 policy to a $500,000 policy was like $50 a year or something,
Yeah.
like
Not
that a little bit additional coverage for a massive amount of more coverage in my mind is like, yeah, may as well just bump that up a little bit.
Yeah, the umbrella policy is probably that's probably the easiest thing that someone can buy, least amount of money, and will provide
Maximum.
so much more coverage overall, no matter what you're doing. And it carries with the boat, it carries with your house, carries with your car. I mean, it's just an umbrella liability policy. And don't we usually use that as a discount too, multi-policy
Yeah.
discount? So
Sometimes you might get more of a discount adding an umbrella policy to your home and auto than it actually cost. And you're getting 500,000 or $1 million extra liability coverage in the event of a loss. So
Got it.
liability.
And that's overall liability covering you kind of through the cracks, if you will, between insurance policies. Okay. And now with insurance in general, but and pertaining here to Reclending's insurance options, is that national? Is that like you can write a policy in any state across the country? Is that international? Could a guy from Canada get a policy? What do things look like there?
I mean, yeah, we have partners that'll quote all the lower 48. We don't really mess with Canada or Mexico, but I mean, you're still covered in those waters as far as boating, as long as you're within 75 nautical miles ashore. So no big deal to go down there, but we have lots of options to check out different carriers for any state. Doesn't mean only Michigan, although we'd have more options in Michigan. We have availability everywhere. So doesn't matter if you're on the West Coast, the East Coast. I mean, we can help you out.
Yeah, and that's what we have available to us. You have to check with your local agent, to know what they've got available. And so it just depends. Like, we know recreation, and so we've set up those partners for that purpose. It doesn't necessarily mean all agents everywhere have those options, but a lot of them will. So it just depends on your local agent and what they've got.
And we'd be happy to answer whatever questions anybody's got.
Oh,
okay?
absolutely.
I mean, same with the loan stuff. I mean, everybody here it's supposed to be bettering our industry and bettering those who participate in our industry. And that should be everyone's goal, but it's ours.
Totally. I think the biggest piece of advice that through kind of dealing with insurance stuff, or a big piece here of if you're signing up a new policy, is like, make sure that your agent is understanding of the fact of what these boats are, and that you are a recreational angler or whatever that may look like. Of like, hey, here's how much gear I have in my boat. This is a little bit more than someone just going out and doing something. Like, we've got a lot going on here, and just want to make sure that I'm covered because of these additional liabilities I'm putting myself out for when I go out in 4-footers when I shouldn't be or something.
Yep.
Maybe don't. Yeah. Well, and I think, Todd, before, as we were kind of prepping for this show, one thing I do want to talk about, we started talking a little bit of boat stories and crashes, but you had one that you shared with me one time, where I believe you put you cracked the hull on a boat.
It
It
hurt.
like, but like, you weren't set up properly from an insurance standpoint. I guess give us the details of what that looks like when you're on the wrong end of this.
Well, I got to preface it by telling the front story. So Stratus had built the ASX Alan Stinson Extreme, a limited production 100 boats. You got to buy, when the 100 were gone, the 100 were gone. So I bought 001, of course. And the boat was a handful. I mean, it was, as we were setting it up, I spent probably 6 hours on the phone with Alan Stinson trying to tell him, I can't drive this thing. It's 70 mile an hour. My elbows are getting wet. I mean, and I've drove a lot of boats. Well, finally he said, let it go until 75 and it'll straighten out. Said, yeah, but I'm going to kill myself in the meantime. No, he was absolutely right. That boat hit 75 and it was rock solid. But from 65 to 75, you just had to hang on and hope the guy that was with you understood what was happening. So get it all set up, and it was on a Friday. Typical Todd fashion. I hadn't insured it, but I had a real good relationship with my agent. So I called him Friday on my way home and I said, hey, got my new boat. What do you want me to send you? And he said, oh, don't worry about it. We'll get it Monday. I said, okay. He said, you're all good. And we've been friends a long time. And I'm sure that he didn't anticipate anything happening, just like I didn't. But so Sunday morning, there was a little derby down on the river, and I run about 7 or 8 miles up this river, and it runs good and everything's wonderful. And we're coming back for weigh-in, and this is its maiden voyage. Okay. I mean, this is and it had flooded the week before. And so it blew a bunch of stuff into the channel, and I didn't see it. And I was all geeked up with my 78 mile an hour bullet, not a bullet, but a Stratus. And I hit this tree, and it came all the way through the bottom, and Bill's pumps, I mean, it threw us right in the air. But the tree came through the bottom, and that ASX was carbon fiber. So the minute that it was breached, it just fell apart. I mean, so I told a buddy of mine to put the guy who was with us, I said, put your life jacket on. We're going to hope we make it back to the launch. By the time we got there, he had to literally stand in the water and keep it from going down while I got the trailer. And I thought, wow, I'm glad I'm insured. I got home. My agent wasn't around on Sunday. I called him Monday morning. I said, man, I got to tell you what happened. And he says, well, we were going to take care of that this morning. He said, I can't cover that. I said, what do you mean? You told me I'm good. He said, we would have been if you hadn't just put your tree through the bottom of it, but either way around. God, I hope my wife don't watch this, because to this date, I don't think she knows that that was my buy completely. I had to pay for all of it. I got to sell the motor and get $16,000 or $18,000 back from it, but that was it. And oh my God, it hurt. I don't do that ever again. If it's a month ahead of time, I'll insure it. Period.
Wow. So it totaled it. I mean, like it was no comment. I mean, I don't even, are there even I've never even seen a carbon fiber boat. I heard that a couple of small, stuff where it was happening in that early 2000s and stuff with carbon fiber, but like that is wild that the whole thing was just like
The
done.
glass guy that I took it to, because I'm thinking maybe we can just fix it. Okay. Glass guy
Yeah.
we took it to, he puts it up on the rack, lifts it up. He called me. He says, "You got to get back here and see this." So I get back there. Now all the water's ran out of the boat. Okay. But you could put your hand up inside and just take the carbon fiber powder. I mean, it had just disintegrated. And well, that was it. It was all gone because the stringers were all carbon fiber. I mean, the underlayment below the glass was Kevlar, but obviously it didn't work the way it should. Either way, costly mistake. I'll never do it again.
That is, yeah, that's a lesson. That's an absolute kick in the shorts lesson, but that's a lesson. Wow.
Yep.
That's
I
so
don't
fun.
know.
Okay.
I'll get you a couple
Well,
more.
folks out there, make sure that you have your boat insured before you take it out on its maiden voyage, because even though it's your maiden voyage, you may not know what happens when there's a log and you're firing down at 78 miles an hour. That's not looking pretty.
I would say make sure you're insured before you pull it off the lot. I mean, a lot of people will make mistakes thinking that they're insured when they're hauling it down the road, and that's only partially true. So you want to make sure that you're actually insured before you pull that off the dealership lot, or if you're buying from an individual before you hook up to it. So I'll let Jake or Ashley explain a little bit more in detail on why. They'll do a better job of that.
Basically, anytime that you have a trailer or anything that's being hauled on a trailer, when that trailer hooks up to a personal vehicle and it goes on a roadway, the liability for that auto that is pulling that trailer covers that trailer when it's going down the road. But it does not cover the physical damage to that trailer or to that boat. So as soon as you leave the dealership with your new boat, your motor, and your trailer, you can haul that safely away from a liability standpoint. But if somebody T-bones you when you are pulling out of that dealership and they total your boat and it does not have insurance on the physical damage of it, then you're going to have a Todd situation where you're paying out of pocket for that. So,
Jeez. Well, that's, yeah. I mean, I can't, I'm sure that has happened before, right? Actually, funny story on insurance that's similar to that. Not myself, but I was in the car at the time. My parents buying the first ever brand new car they ever bought. It was a minivan, 2005 Honda, whatever, Odyssey minivan. All the kids were all excited. Like, this is a brand new car. First new car my dad has ever bought. My mom, backing it out of the dealership, ran into another car.
it happens a lot.
Oh man.
Oh, I just remember my dad. My dad is so good in these situations. He just looked and he's just like, honestly, I don't know what to say. I'm just going to laugh about this because like, what else are we going to do?
Yeah.
But I could see that happen. I mean, you're pulling your boat away. You think you're covered because of your driving policy or whatever it may be. But when the boat flies off the trailer, who's covering the boat? How many pictures do we see of guys running down the road and end up getting an accident? The boat generally, as long as you're going fast enough, does not stay on the trailer. There's 3 ratchet straps on that thing, and that thing is a missile and either goes into the back of someone's truck or the ditch or wherever it may go.
We were, Jody and I were headed up north, and we had a guy behind us lose his boat. And on that commercial where the boat always passes the car, every time it does. And all of a sudden there's this boat. I'm looking up and said, Jody, look at this. And it hit and you could tell the guy he wanted to stop. And when he stopped, the boat passed him. And no, I didn't even stop to see what it was because it was tragic. It was, when the cone hits in and it flips, the boat usually doesn't fare well.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man.
Terrifying. Yeah.
So be careful. Do it
Yeah.
the right way. Take your time.
Do it the right way. Totally. Well, to wrap things up, guys, I think we kind of, I guess, the last thing that I think is worth mentioning here is just additional coverage when you are looking at how expensive these boats are now. I mean, we're talking about $100,000 boats. Nice to see now that we're seeing some of the advertising right now from both Basscat and Phoenix kind of in the 70,000s for a 20-foot, 21-foot bass boat. I thought that was good to see. I know those prices have kind of been there, but nice to see a nationally advertised price of a little bit less, maybe. So I thought that was good to see, but still, nonetheless, we're talking about very expensive when you start adding graphs and everything else on these boats. But what else from a liability perspective, anything like that, when you're talking about you're financing one of these boats and there's a lot of interest involved, what do things look like outside of normal insurance to maybe protect yourself?
I think I'll start it, but I'll let them expound on it, only because they're probably better at it than I am. But as I've gotten older, like we talked about earlier, life insurance has become a very integral part of my financial plan. Okay. And used to be a time that everyone, well, lots of folks bought the credit life and disability. So it was a life insurance policy and a disability policy that would cover you in the event of you dying. It would cover the amount of that loan. So it was a decreasing value life insurance policy. And when you paid the loan off or you traded it, it went away. And I think life insurance should be an integral part of every purchase. If you don't factor in what it is that your wife or your parents are going to have to pay if something happens to you with that boat, you're missing something. You agree? I mean,
Definitely agree.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, you got to think about all your finance, everything you got out there, as far as obviously counting the boat, your mortgage, anything else you might have, but thinking about your family and your loved ones and who's going to pay for that if something happens to you. So whether it's term life insurance, permanent life insurance, just look at something to cover what you got out there as far as finance in the world, and try to cover that the best you can, so somebody doesn't have that burden later. Whether it's a 20-year, 30-year term policy, that stays with you versus the credit life goes away. So I would always recommend something like that that's yours and you own, you can take with you where you go and cover your finances and use that as a tool to protect yourself.
And your loved ones.
so generally, it is a general rule, $150,000 term policy on somebody who's 35 years old. What's that cost a year?
Can average anywhere from $20 to $40 a month. So it's a relatively low payment. Of course, that's rated based on somebody's medical history, medical evaluation, but it's definitely a term policy that can protect the amount you finance on your bass boat, can really be budgeted in for a very small amount throughout the month. And then I think it's also important to note that when it comes to life insurance, the younger that you are, the more attainable, I guess it is, because the older you get, the more expensive it gets. So these guys that are just out now starting their fishing careers, making a hobby of it, they're buying their first boat or maybe their fifth boat. They should definitely consider purchasing life insurance to protect that asset and protect their loved ones from having the burden of paying for that asset, because it's not going to get any cheaper for them to do so the older they get.
Got it. Makes a lot of sense. And really, at the end of the day, a $20 to $40 a month add-on to things is one less order from Omnia Tackle or anything like that when we're talking about
How much life insurance do you have, Adam?
What'd you say?
How much life insurance do you have?
I don't believe I have any life insurance.
Kind of thought that too.
Yeah, now you got me. I'm in this stage of life right now where you're like, hey, look, kind of starting to be a little more risk adverse, like we're talking about, making sure things are insured. And now you're like, well, hey, here's one to consider, another one to think about. So
At some point in life, you got to realize you're not 10 foot tall and bulletproof. And I mean, that's the, I think a lot of these folks, a lot of these kids, and please, I don't mean that negatively, young folks, I think they don't realize how vulnerable they are. And I'll try and tell them every chance I get. So.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't disagree. I think that's great advice. Well, folks, I think that's kind of where we're going to wrap things up. I mean, my take on all of this is understand insurance is not a sexy topic, right? We're not talking about flipping or catching a great big one on something, but I think it's worth talking about. And I hope people enjoyed some of the banter and also some of the stories of myself and Todd crashing boats, because hopefully it's one of the last times that I have insurance claims, but yeah, I'm not 10 foot tall and bulletproof. So I'm going to make sure I'm properly insured when it comes to everything. But how can folks get a hold of Reclending's insurance team specifically? Of course, we'll have links in the show notes here, but how can folks just get some information to see if it's worth them pursuing?
You can either go, if you go to the website, you can either choose to go to the insurance side of it or the loan side of it. If you go to the loan side of it, someone from insurance is automatically going to call you on a loan. Or you can call the office and you've got the number, and you can select, I think it's what, option two? Option two. It'll take it right to the insurance folks. And I'm serious. If somebody's just got questions, just call. I mean, we haven't been doing this long enough to know the fast talk yet. Does that make sense? We'll just give you the answer.
Yeah. Yeah. I like it. And worth certainly having the conversation about when you're going to finance a boat. May as well have the conversation about the insurance and making sure you're squared away and properly ready to go there with the same folks. In my mind, I think it's a great fit, and it helps simplify your life too, because I don't know about everyone there, but when it comes to subscriptions and credit cards and insurance and home and bills, it's like, why are there a million different things that I have to keep track of? It's nice when things are in the same place.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah, that's something we always tell people. Like, we can give you a quick, easy option. I've got everything you're doing for your loan right here. Like, we can do this afternoon. Like, it's very simple when we have all the information. So keep it in one place.
That's
Love
also
it.
something
Love
with
it.
Reclending that we pride ourselves on, is being that one-stop shop here. And everybody at this table is passionate about insurance and educating customers on insurance. So I hope that you definitely do call if you have questions.
Very good. Great.
Do you see
Well,
Did you see my car?
yeah, what's up with this? We got an old car out front. Let's hear
No,
about it.
it's a Jim Beam decanter.
That's a Jim Beam decanter?
So I didn't know, but Jim Beam they've done like 1,500 different special decanters like that. And that one's to celebrate Oldsmobile's 75th anniversary. And I found it in some antique shop, and I thought, crying out loud, you got to have that. I mean, it's beautiful. $20.
Wow. Holy cow. That is yeah, that's going to be the centerpiece in the vault. That's fantastic.
Yep.
Oh man. I need to make it up just to come hang out in the vault and do some bourbon tasting, because it sounds like from the conversations we've had, there's quite a collection building, and yeah, I'd like to be a test dummy.
Yeah, we'll let you go through Heather's bourbon class. She's really good at bourbon.
Whiskey all around. I'm a equal opportunity whiskey connoisseur. So not just bourbon.
Love it. Love it. Well, I wish everybody there at Reclending, you guys have a super safe. I'm sure we won't talk necessarily before 4th of July weekend, but be safe out there. A lot of boats running around, and hopefully you don't get back into the office after 4th of July weekend and have a bunch of insurance claims. That would be terrible.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Adam.
Yep. Thanks, everybody. Have a good rest of your afternoon.
Bye.
All right.